Hello, very good evening to you. The hospital, which is seeking to remove life support from the seriously ill baby Charlie Gard, has contacted the police after staff received death threats. Great Ormond Street Hospital said doctors and nurses had faced a tide of abuse in the street and online. It comes as the High Court is considering whether Charlie's parents should be allowed to take him to the United States for experimental treatment. That's opposed by the hospital, which argues it's not in Charlie's best interests. Our correspondent Laura Trant reports.
It's a case that's touched people around the world, attracting a growing number of campaigners who disagree with medical experts over the treatment of a critically ill baby boy. 11-month-old Charlie Gard has a form of mitochondrial disease, a condition that causes progressive muscle weakness and irreversible brain damage. His parents, Connie Yates and Chris Gard, want to take him to the US for pioneering treatment. But Great Ormond Street Hospital says it's in Charlie's best interests to turn off his life support and allow him to die. Tonight, the hospital said in a statement that their doctors and nurses have been subjected to a shocking and disgraceful tide of hostility. Staff have received abuse both in the street and online. Thousands of abusive messages, they said, have been sent to doctors and nurses whose life's work is to care for sick children. Many of these messages are menacing, including death threats. The hospital has reported the abuse to the police. It comes as the High Court decides on Charlie's future, and a day after the judge urged any campaigners outside the hospital to respect the needs and wishes of sick children being treated there and their parents.
Well, Laura joins us now. Just put this into greater context for us, Laura, of course, because you have been in court following these proceedings.
Yes, I was there yesterday when the judge said that protesters are not to harass anybody going in or out of the hospital, and to bear in mind they could have a very sick child being treated there. And in recent days, Mr Justice Francis has addressed the issue of abuse against doctors and nurses. He said he's been told that staff at Great Ormond Street Hospital have been subjected to vile abuse and threats. He warned that perpetrators would be punished if their identities became known, and he said he wanted that message to be heard loud and clear. Well, tonight, Charlie's parents, Chris Gard and Connie Yates, they have responded to Great Ormond Street Hospital. This is what they've said. We don't condone abusive or threatening behaviour to staff or anybody in connection with our son. We too get abuse and have to endure nasty and hurtful comments on a daily basis. People have different opinions, they said, and we accept that, but there is a line that should not be crossed. It makes a stressful situation worse and is upsetting for all involved. Well, Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, he's also commented this evening. He said it's a sad and a complex case, but it's totally unacceptable for dedicated doctors and nurses at one of our great NHS institutions that they're suffering this level of abuse. On Monday, the High Court will resume the hearing into Charlie Gard's future, and the judge has said he hopes a decision will be reached by Tuesday.
OK, Laura, thank you.
The parents of the terminally ill baby Charlie Gard say they've suffered a backlash after Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is treating their son, revealed its staff have received death threats. Charlie's parents have been fighting a legal battle against the hospital, which wants to remove his life support because of his illness. Well, our reporter Helena Lee is with me now. Helena, what have Charlie Gard's parents been saying?
Well, as you say, Clive, this is in response to that Great Ormond Street statement which they put out last night, which they said both doctors and nurses have been subjected to what it called a shocking and disgraceful tide of abuse, both online and verbal abuse in the street, some of them death threats. So tonight, Charlie's parents, Connie and Chris, have responded to that statement. They say they are extremely upset by the backlash, they say, that they have received since that statement was put out. By backlash, we understand that to be online comments directed towards them. They say they suffered the most hurtful comments from the public. And Connie, Charlie's mother, goes on to say, Chris and I are just ordinary parents with a very sick baby, and we simply have his best interests at heart. We do not, she says, and have not ever condoned any threatening or abusive remarks towards any staff members at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Tomorrow, the case goes back to the High Court. It starts at 2 o'clock. The judge will look at new evidence especially that meeting between the American doctor proposing the treatment and medical staff at the hospital, and he's expected to give his decision on Tuesday.
OK, Helena, many thanks. Helena Lee there.
The parents of the terminally ill baby Charlie Gard have ended their legal battle to take him to the US for experimental treatment. Charlie's father, Chris Gard, gave an emotional statement outside the High Court, saying they were going to spend their last precious moments with their son, who would now not make his first birthday in just under 2 weeks' time. Earlier, their lawyer told the court that time had run out for the baby, as an American doctor who examined Charlie had said he could no longer offer the therapy after seeing the results of a new MRI scan last week. Doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital say the treatment could never have worked. Here's our medical correspondent, Fergus Walsh.
Shame on God! Shame on God!
Raw emotion outside the High Court, while inside, Charlie Gard's parents were accepting their fight is over and their desperately ill son should be allowed to die. They emerged from a highly emotional hearing to pay tribute to Charlie.
Our son is an absolute warrior and we could not be prouder of him, and we will miss him terribly. His body, heart and soul may soon be gone, but his spirit will live on for eternity, and he will make a difference to people's lives for years to come. We will make sure of that. We are now going to spend our last precious moments with our son Charlie, who unfortunately won't make his first birthday in just under 2 weeks' time.
Charlie has been in intensive care in Great Ormond Street Hospital since October. He has a rare inherited condition, mitochondrial depletion syndrome, and cannot move, feed or breathe unaided. The central question was whether this powder, nucleoside therapy, which is added to food, could boost his muscle function. It's never been tried on animals or humans with his condition. His parents raised £1.3 million for the treatment in the United States. That money will now go to a foundation in Charlie's name. But every neurologist who examined him said the treatment was futile because by January he'd suffered catastrophic and irreversible brain damage. The High Court had to intervene and in April backed the doctors, saying Charlie's suffering should end, his life support be withdrawn. Every legal appeal by the parents failed. But they had powerful supporters, including the Pope and Donald Trump, the latter tweeting an offer of help. This has been an extraordinary case, a battle over the fate of a baby boy that was fought out not just here in court, but internationally. The judge said it was one of the pitfalls of social media that the watching world felt it right to have opinions without knowing the facts of the case. He said the court's paramount consideration had been Charlie's best interests at all times. The case came back to court when this American neurologist, Michio Hirano, claimed new evidence that his nucleoside therapy could help. Last week, he and another doctor from the Vatican flew over to examine Charlie for the first time. New MRI body scans were ordered. On Friday night, Charlie's parents accepted these showed his muscle wasting was now so severe he was beyond help. There was bitterness he did not get the chance of treatment sooner.
A whole lot of time has been wasted. We are now in July and our poor boy has been left to just lie in hospital for months. Had Charlie been given the treatment sooner, he would have had the potential to be a normal, healthy little boy.
In court, Connie Yates said they would be haunted by the what-ifs for the rest of their lives, but now they had to let Charlie go.
It's an incredibly brave decision by Charlie's parents. They have thought through for themselves what the new evidence shows, and they've reached a conclusion. Probably the judge would have reached the same. It's very brave for them to do it without waiting to hear what he had to say.
Great Ormond Street Hospital said this had been a bruising court case, adding the agony, desolation and bravery of the parents' decision humbled all who worked there. They are now supporting the family in their final time together.
And Fergus is here with me now. Fergus, listening to Charlie's parents, it's clear that they feel there may have been hope if there'd been an earlier intervention.
That's right. The parents and the hospital are never going to agree on what was best for Charlie. And it was deeply moving in court when Charlie's mum, Connie, read out this anguished statement that he'd been denied the chance of being a normal boy. Some of the press and the lawyers were in tears. But the hospital will point out that he has a severe progressive mitochondrial disorder, that it's a cruel condition that wastes the muscles and is generally fatal in infancy. Now, we've heard from the parents that the doctors and the staff at Great Ormond Street who devote their lives to caring for sick children, they have necessarily remained anonymous, and many of them have received death threats. And there's frustration, I think, that some of those who offered to help Charlie and said he could be helped by the experimental therapy had never even examined him until this week, and that had raised false hopes and expectations. Now the focus moves to Charlie's final hours, perhaps days, and he will receive palliative care. He's already on morphine, on pain relief, and that'll be increased before the ventilator that helps him breathe is switched off. Now, Charlie will then obviously pass away, but the war of words over what was best for this little boy will continue.
OK, Fergus, thank you. The parents of the terminally ill baby Charlie Gard are tonight waiting to find out if they'll be able to take him home to die. Having yesterday abandoned their legal fight to keep Charlie alive, his mother, Connie Yates, returned to court to ask that her son leave hospital. A judge will make the final decision tomorrow. Charlie's parents are now pleading for a doctor who can help them to come forward. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh reports.
The legal battle over this desperately sick boy now centres on where and how soon he dies. Charlie needs a mechanical ventilator to breathe, is tube-fed and cannot move. Yesterday, his parents gave up their fight to take him to the United States and agreed no more treatment could help him. But Charlie's mum, Connie, was back at court this afternoon to make it clear she did not want him to die in the intensive care unit where he's been since October. The parents' lawyer said it was their last wish that Charlie dies at home for a few days of tranquility outside the hospital setting. The hospital says it won't stand in the parents' way and yet is putting up obstacles. Lawyers for the parents said they would pay private nurses to take over his care and then later seek to recover the costs from the NHS. But the court heard there were practical issues to be resolved. For example, whether Charlie's ventilator would fit through their front door. In a statement, Great Ormond Street Hospital said it wanted to honour the parents' wishes, but the care plan must be safe. It must spare Charlie all pain, and it must protect his dignity. Charlie is a child who requires highly specialised treatment. His care cannot be simplified. It must be provided in a specialist setting by specialists. The dispute over where and how soon Charlie should die typifies the utter breakdown in the relationship between the parents and the hospital. The judge, Mr. Justice Francis, said this was a matter that was crying out for mediation. Great Ormond Street says it's offered that, but the parents have refused. The judge said the parents were entitled to decide where they spent the next few days, but this should not extend into weeks. That would be unacceptable, as it would simply extend the grieving process. Charmian Evans lost her son Guy when he was 5. He was profoundly disabled and tube-fed. She too had searched for a cure for his condition.
They've got to learn to let him go at all sorts of levels. They've got to know that stuff happens and they mustn't be bitter, because that'll only eat them. There's no point in that. What they've got to do is look at all the positive things.
The hospital has offered a compromise for Charlie to be transferred to a hospice where doctors from Great Ormond Street would supervise his palliative care and death after a period of some hours. Charlie's parents say they want days, not hours, and a hospice is a second best option. Fergus Walsh, BBC News at the High Court.
The parents of the terminally ill baby Charlie Gard are tonight waiting to find out if they'll be able to take him home to die. Having yesterday abandoned their legal fight to keep Charlie alive, his mother, Connie Yates, returned to court to ask that her son leave hospital. A judge will make the final decision tomorrow. Charlie's parents are now pleading for a doctor who can help them to come forward. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh reports.
The legal battle over this desperately sick boy now centres on where and how soon he dies. Charlie needs a mechanical ventilator to breathe, is tube-fed and cannot move. Yesterday his parents gave up their fight to take him to the United States and agreed no more treatment could help him. But Charlie's mum, Connie, was back at court this afternoon to make it clear she did not want him to die in the intensive care unit where he's been since October. The parents' lawyer said it was their last wish that Charlie dies at home for a few days of tranquility outside the hospital setting. The hospital says it won't stand in the parents' way and yet is putting up obstacles. Lawyers for the parents said they would pay private nurses to take over his care and then later seek to recover the costs from the NHS. But the court heard there were practical issues to be resolved. For example, whether Charlie's ventilator would fit through their front door. In a statement, Great Ormond Street Hospital said it wanted to honour the parents' wishes, but the care plan must be safe. It must spare Charlie all pain, and it must protect his dignity. Charlie is a child who requires highly specialised treatment. His care cannot be simplified. It must be provided in a specialist setting by specialists. The dispute over where and how soon Charlie should die typifies the utter breakdown in the relationship between the parents and the hospital. The judge, Mr. Justice Francis, said this was a matter that was crying out for mediation. Great Ormond Street says it's offered that, but the parents have refused. The judge said the parents were entitled to decide where they spent the next few days, but this should not extend into weeks. That would be unacceptable, as it would simply extend the grieving process. Charmian Evans lost her son Guy when he was 5. He was profoundly disabled and tube-fed. She too had searched for a cure for his condition.
They've got to learn to let him go at all sorts of levels. They've got to know that stuff happens and they mustn't be bitter, because that'll only eat them. There's no point in that. What they've got to do is look at all the positive things.
The hospital has offered a compromise for Charlie to be transferred to a hospice where doctors from Great Ormond Street would supervise his palliative care and death after a period of some hours. Charlie's parents say they want days, not hours, and a hospice is a second best option. Fergus Walsh, BBC News at the High Court.
A High Court judge has given the parents of the terminally ill baby Charlie Gard until noon tomorrow to reach an agreement with the hospital over the arrangements for his death. Chris Gard and Connie Yates have now accepted their son will end his life in a hospice, not at home as they wanted, but still can't reach agreement over the details of his end-of-life care. Well, Fergus Walsh, our medical correspondent, is here with me. And Fergus, every last harrowing detail of the end of this child's life is being fought over.
Yes, the final disagreement is over how long Charlie should have at the hospice before he dies. His parents want to hire a private medical team so they can spend perhaps a week with him there. And they say that some nurses from Great Ormond Street have volunteered, but they cannot find a specialist doctor prepared to supervise that care for such a long period away from an intensive care unit. Now, lawyers for Great Ormond Street said this shouldn't drag on. It's not in Charlie's best interest, and they proposed that he should be transferred to the hospice on Friday and his life support would be withdrawn within hours. The judge gave the parents until noon tomorrow to see if they could reach an agreement, but if not, he made an order that Charlie be transferred to the hospice and that shortly thereafter his breathing tube would be withdrawn. Now, Charlie can't breathe unaided, so death would be immediate. The judge said that it was now 3.5 months since he'd made the first order that Charlie should be allowed to die with dignity, and he had to take into account that Charlie may be suffering. Now, Connie Yates left the court in tears. She was urged to spend her final hours with her son rather than with lawyers. But the legal proceedings in this protracted and desperately sad case are now at an end.
Fergus, thank you. The terminally ill baby Charlie Gard will be moved to a hospice and have his life support withdrawn after his parents failed to get agreement to spend up to a week there with him. They had wanted a private medical team at the hospice to care for their son. Great Ormond Street Hospital, where Charlie is being treated, said that wasn't in his best interests. It follows a legal battle by Charlie's parents to take him out of the country for experimental treatment.
Good evening. It's been announced that Charlie Gard, the baby who was at the centre of a High Court battle over his care, has died. The 11-month-old was moved to a hospice where his life support was removed. A statement from his family said, "Our beautiful little boy has gone. We are so proud of you, Charlie." Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh now looks back at the story of the child whose plight became an issue of international concern.
Today, Charlie is 2 weeks old.
This is Charlie Gard without breathing or feeding tubes, born apparently healthy, but soon a devastating genetic condition emerged which causes progressive muscle weakness. By his side throughout have been his parents, Connie Yates and Chris Gard. Charlie was transferred from intensive care at Great Ormond Street Hospital, where he'd spent 10 months, to a hospice, where he died earlier today. They'd fought a lengthy battle to keep Charlie alive, refusing to accept he'd suffered catastrophic brain damage, and they raised funds online for experimental treatment in the United States. Great Ormond Street applied to court to end Charlie's life support, and every judge backed them. At the UK Supreme Court, with Charlie's parents sitting behind, the hospital's barrister said his suffering should end.
The reality is that Charlie can't see, he can't hear, he can't move, he can't cry, he can't swallow. Immensely sadly, his condition is one that affords him no benefit.
An American doctor offering to treat Charlie with this experimental powder had not seen his full medical records, and it took 6 months before he came to London to examine him. Finally, on Monday at the High Court, Charlie's parents abandoned their legal fight to keep him alive, saying time had run out.
Our son is an absolute warrior, and we could not be prouder of him, and we will miss him terribly. His body, heart and soul may soon be gone, but his spirit will live on for eternity, and he will make a difference to people's lives for years to come. We will make sure of that.
A private family tragedy was fought out in public. Even the location and timing of Charlie's death became a matter of dispute. Doctors and nurses at Great Ormond Street, one of the world's most renowned children's hospitals, received abuse and even death threats, which Charlie's parents condemned.
Let us pray.
Pro-life groups adopted the cause, and Charlie's plight became an international issue when both the Pope and Donald Trump tweeted offers of help. The judge said it was a pitfall of social media that people commented without knowing the facts. Charlie died a week before his first birthday. His parents said they were sorry they couldn't save him, but would set up a foundation in his name to help other sick children.
And Fergus is with me now. Fergus, what have people been saying tonight following this news of Charlie's death?
Well, tributes led by Pope Francis, who said he was praying for Charlie's parents. Great Ormond Street Hospital, where staff have been caring for Charlie since October, sent their heartfelt condolences. Theresa May said she was deeply saddened, as did the American Vice President Mike Pence. Charlie had become an international symbol, a cause that was adopted by many groups, but very few knew the intricacies about his case, including the American doctor who offered help to him. Astonishingly, he had not read the court judgments in April, which set out why Charlie should die with dignity.
And as you say, this little boy became the subject of a major ethical battle. How did that happen?
Well, it all began when trust broke down between Charlie's parents and his doctors. And when they could not agree on what was best for Charlie, the courts had to intervene. They had to decide what was in Charlie's best interest. Now, many will say, well, surely the parents know best. Why not let them try this treatment? But the courts and neurologists said it was futile. And in this country, it is not ethical to give treatment which you know will not be of any benefit. And back in January, all the neurologists who examined Charlie said he had irreversible brain damage. Now, this is devastating for Charlie's parents. They went public with their fight, but now it must be hoped they get the privacy to grieve for their son.
Fergus, thank you.